So let's go back to Pexip a bit. Obviously, you get this question a lot, I guess, but just to hear from you the competitive landscape. I mean, they're so easy to compare Pexip to Zoom and then Microsoft Teams and Google Hangouts, etc. How do you sort of paint the picture on the competitive landscape and also the specific niche that Pexip has targeted?
Yeah, I think video conferencing has really exploded since the start of 2020. It's actually difficult to try and explain sort of the massive shift that has happened from a position where video conferencing was, for one, hardly used, and also didn't have that many people believing in it as a concept, to then fast forward 18 months after the pandemic, where it's really become a mainstream tool and become quite commoditized. So that's definitely been a tremendous journey, both for Pexip and the industry. And I think it created both opportunities and challenges for Pexip. So back in 2020, the room for Pexip as a sort of very specialized video tool that really provided this great video experience was certainly there. And we had a lot of customers using Pexip for video, and then in parallel using other tools for their other collaboration needs. Now that video has become so mainstream, and also if sort of, I would argue that it's become fairly commoditized, then we see that it's being more and more integrated into work streams like Teams, like Google Meet, that sort of fits into the overall productivity bundle. Although you have some examples, as Zoom as an example, that are still then surviving mainly as a video tool. So I think that sort of overall use case of enterprise collaboration has been smaller for Pexip now than it was prior to the pandemic, although the market as a whole has been dramatically larger. The positive for Pexip is that around that, there are a lot of niches that we are really successful in. So one, providing sort of interoperability, so standard-based video conferencing units, the stuff that you find in most boardrooms and enterprise meeting rooms. We are really great at connecting those with the platforms of Microsoft and Google. So being that intermediary that can just ensure that everything keeps working together, and that there's no sort of user that is stuck in this enormous and expensive boardroom and has to join on their laptop, is certainly one of the use cases that now is much more common than it was prior to 2020, and where Pexip is uniquely sort of positioned to deliver on that. The other use case that we see that have really sort of taken off as part of the pandemic is the whole concept around video enablement, or how you meet your doctor using video. When you go to an online store, that you can use video to ask for help from the retail clerk. When you want to meet a bank advisor, and you would earlier go to a retail branch, and now you see more and more of that is happening on video. That's also a segment that Pexip is finding a lot of success in, because we have a platform which is really built to be tailored and built to fit the large enterprises. And there it's much easier for us to use our strengths and the sort of tie into a sort of overall productivity suite where you have document sharing and other workflows is far less in that type of use case.
Very interesting. I mean, doing the research on Pexip, it also stood out to me that flexibility is a big edge or a big strength. Just on another similar topic in terms of video conferencing, if you look at privacy, I know it's a big topic, but in your mind, how do you break that down, the privacy aspect of delivering a great product?
I think privacy has become more and more top of mind as there's a saying, perhaps mainly in Norway, that data is the new oil, and that it's really a lot of value in your data. And then as an individual or as a business, who has access to that data and what they can use that data for, it becomes more and more important. And so you've seen, especially over the last decade, there are rules in Europe and in the US and in other locations in terms of GDPR and other sort of privacy regulation has really stepped up over the past decade. So I think privacy, just because it guards our data, is super important. Then you have different flavors of privacy. I think there's one that I can trust a organization to keep my data and to use it in a respectful manner. That I think is the baseline for most services, both digital and physical these days. And then you have a different sort of privacy need if you are into more specialized use cases, such as the government wanting to have a top secret conference, the military that wants to have a meeting platform with their soldiers out in the field. That's where sort of the needs around privacy and the needs around having control and security are much higher than in most other use cases.
Being a tech company, do you have sort of like a North Star when it comes to privacy, like a goal you want to reach? Or is it sort of something that just always top of mind and you always have to adjust, think about it? I mean, there is a case where if you go too private, you lose all transparency. And of course, that isn't, or you can argue it's balance regardless.
No, and I think it is, especially when it comes to user experience, because there's a lot of things that are very simple that comes at the expense of privacy and security. So if you were to have a secret unique password for every sort of video meeting that you were joining, that would be super secure and also quite private. But of course, it would be a bit of a challenge to juggle all of those unique passwords. So I think that's truly that is a trade-off that you have to make. And so the trade-off will be different for a meeting sort of within a company where they are most likely able to trust that whoever is providing the service won't misuse that data. And then in situation where privacy and security are sort of much more important. And then you need a different type of trade-off between what you can accept and in terms of user friendliness and security. You started the question sort of what is our North Star on that? And I think you really have to have privacy and security as part of your overall design. I think it's very, very difficult to try and retrofit security and privacy into a solution and into your overall philosophy. Just as an example, sort of in terms of what data you collect. So there's a lot of data that we could potentially collect from our users that would be useful to have both ourselves for to then do good targeting with ads, etc. And I mean, it could even potentially be a asset that could be interesting to others in the industry. But for us, it's really been a sort of conscious decision to gather as little information as we need to maintain our operations, but to really ensure the privacy and security of our users, which is our top priority. And in that, there are then some trade-offs that if we need to err, we will err on the side of privacy and security, and really make sure that we deliver a great experience on that, and then risk not having all the data that could potentially be useful to us further down the road.